Thanks for joining us on Business Daily right here on Trust Television. I am Yusuf Akogu. We say Happy New Year to our viewers out there. Of course, it's a new year, and of course, a lot is expected this year as we begin this new year with a very, some controversial tax act, which is expected to take effect from today. Of course, we look to see how Nigeria will react to what is going to happen in the coming days. A lot of issues are before now, but the federal government insisted on going ahead with the policy despite some oppositions from different quarters. We look to see what is going to be the reaction to that, like I said, in the coming days and, of course, weeks, even months. Of course, a lot is expected this year with regards to the implementation of this policy. There's also the major concern, actually, is the issue of accountability. If that can be taken care of course, Nigerians may as well go to sleep knowing that their money would provide the basic necessity of life for them. But that's not our topic that we're focusing on this morning. Today, we're looking at a lot of issues. Of course, how the Nigerian economy fare in the year 2025, the outgone year, and of course, what are the outlook and the prospect for 2026. I'm being joined on the show by Dr. Aliyu Ilias, who is an economist. He joins me virtually from Abuja here. Good morning, Dr. Ilias.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Happy New Year to Nigerians. Happy New Year to you. It shall be a prosperous year for us by God's grace. 2026 will be a year of prosperity for Nigerians.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. First of all, let me get your overview. How will you rate the year 2025? 2025, how did you rate the year in terms of economic performance overall?
Well, the fact remains that looking at where we are coming from, you recall that we're actually coming from 2024 to 2025 then. So if you look at the economic analysis, economic happenings during 2024, you say yes. 2025 was a better year in terms of the well-being of Nigeria, in terms of macroeconomic indices, in terms of performance, in terms of a lot of things. The only thing we could say was not well in 2025 was the budget itself. For every other thing, I think it's a good one, and they are a good trajectory for Nigeria.
For Nigeria, but let's look at some of the economic indices, especially the macroeconomic indices, as in the year 2025. We saw inflation. If we can, my director can put that graphics on the screen there. Let's see how the inflation numbers were in the year 2025. Of course, we saw inflation moving from 34.8%. Of course, after rebasing, it moved down to 24.48%, 23.18% in February. In March, it moved to 24.23%. Of course, in the month of April as well, 23.71%, 22.97%. It kept moving, of course, on the downward trend up until it got to 14.45% in the year 2025. Of course, this was after the rebasing. Dr. Aliyu, looking at these numbers now, how will you rate? We saw inflation moving downward for the first time, 8 consecutive times on the decline.
I think it's a good positive one. It's will I say it's unprecedented, because to have been at that level of 30% to come down to after rebasing 24, and we now see consecutive drop. I think it's a good one for at least for the numbers. It's a good one. It's a good optics for FDI. It's a good optics for analysis. So I think it's a good one. Then you recall that CBN put up a lot of things to actually achieve this. I recall at the point they actually said it's fallout of cryptocurrency and what have you. At the point they said it's the chain, they have to actually reduce them. At the point they said it's because of the border that is opening to some things that they have to close it. So a lot of things they have put together. So, but the good part of it is that after all, we later achieve the expectation. Recall, this actually surpassed the target of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I remember he said he will bring it down to 15%. For now, it is 14.45%. So it's a good one for the numbers, very well, and it's a good one for the optics, I should say.
Talking about being the good one for the numbers, is it a good one for the streets? Is the number corresponding with what we're having on the streets?
In economists, you look about a lot of things, the outliers, the ripple effects. You look at it, trickling down to people. So if you look at 2025 as a year, yes, we've seen that the downward trend of those numbers in terms of inflation, but in terms of the survival of Nigerians, in terms of the happenings in the market, it does not actually reflect. Yes, it is reflecting the downward trend of prices because tomato has dropped, price of garri has dropped, price of rice has dropped, but the fact that it has dropped, has it actually affect the household positively? That's the question we need to ask, because if you look at the demand side, that is Nigerians demanding for this food or commodities rather, Nigeria does not have the capacity to demand for it simply because the disposable income in our hands does not actually encourage us to actually go for those things. So if those things are coming down and we don't have the power to buy it, it's as if we are still not failing. And I can tell you the major thing that I think could be a factor that we must work in this 2026. So that in 2026 we really solve it is the issue of transportation. You agree with me that no matter what, for the throughout of 2025, we've not seen a reduction in the price of in the cost of transportation. And cost of transportation means a lot in the sense that no matter the commodity you are going to push, no matter what you are going to sell, if perhaps if you have a commodity in a state like Kebbi, you have farm produce and you want to take it to Abuja or to Kano or to Lagos, it has to still pass through transport. So we have not seen transport reduction as it were so far. Then I must also come back to say most of those gains, I pray it will not be ephemeral in the sense that if you look at the food, especially the food component of it, I'm thinking the border has been opening for some food to come in. If you look at it now, that simply means that when you open border for food to come into Nigeria, what are you bringing? You are still importing inflation in the long run, and you are also killing the farmers. If you look at it now, most farmers are losing out now. If you look at them, most of them are losing out. I was thinking that instead of us bringing in those commodities from outside, why don't you empower the farmer the more? Why don't you support the irrigation? Why don't you support the all-round season farming? Putting all these things would have helped to cushion the effect. Not that you bring an external solution. That is, you are exporting labor, you are exporting employment. So you are creating employment for another country at the expense of Nigeria. You recall that, and if you look at it, farm actually employ Nigerians more compared to any other endeavor. So that's why I think we must be careful by quickly in this 2026 empower the farmer so that they can actually balance these imported commodities.
Indeed, that's a very valid point that you raised there. Farmers have complained that they have spent so much more in terms of production costs. At the same time, government opened the border, of course, to allow foreign food into the country, thereby crashing the prices of them. Many of them have reported losses actually, and they are calling for subsidy. Do you think this?
Even in addition to that, I can tell you that cost of fertilizer, everything is coming down, but the cost of fertilizer is not coming down. So I must tell you that no matter what you are doing, if the input, farm input is not coming down, that simply means you are not supporting the farmers. And this also is a danger. You know why it's dangerous? It is like we are eroding the gain of President Muhammadu Buhari achievement in terms of anchor borrower. No matter how we say we have political anchor borrowers, I can still tell you that anchor borrower actually work for me to about 70%, because at that time we have self-sufficient in rice and we could see some farm produce being sufficient. So I think this government should develop a program. It may not domicile in CBN, it may domicile in BOI or in the Bank of Agriculture. I think that is even better. It might domicile in Bank of Agriculture, but we should make sure that there is a way to cushion this effect, especially to have a reduction in the cost of fertilizer.
Indeed, talking about input costs, there is also a major issue there that you raised. Also, in the course of the year as well, talking about the year 2025, government did say it invested in some, mechanized farming. Some tractors were actually brought in, but most farmers are yet, according to them, to see some of these tractors. Do you think government involvement at this point, or even not this, giving out these tools at the right time, is in a way affecting farmers' productivity?
Right. So what I would say is that, the problem of Nigeria is that there's always solutions, but most solutions are bottom up, top to bottom approach. Now you go ahead to get a tractor for farmers. Yes, it's going to be a relief, but the question now is that, are you sure that's what that farmer actually need as at that point in time? So sometimes you need to come together with the farmers and make sure that you actually give them. That's the problem of poverty reduction program in Nigeria from my research. It shows that most of the solution we created is always top to bottom, not bottom up. And bottom up always bring more solutions, because the challenge of people in the north might different from the challenge of people in the south, southeast, southwest. They vary. So sometimes you need to go down to really know what's your farm problem, so that you can get it. Some people are into fishing. Are you saying a fisherman needs a tractor? No. So it has different reasons, So these are the things we must start to do. So it's a good one that we're bringing some implements, but we must bring implement that actually solve the problem. Look at the issue of the anchor borrower. What they actually, when they give out the money, people use it for their immediate problem and solution. So we must look at that direction. The Ministry of Agriculture must start looking at people's direct problems, farmers' direct problems, not creating the same solution for all farmers. So one size does not fit all. Some people's problem are not even tractor. Their problem is fertilizer. So these are the things that we must look into critically. And I remember during Akinwumi, the former AFDB, when he was Minister of Agriculture, his own solution was direct fertilizer solution to people. So we must bring about all the solutions that have worked in the past, bring another one in addition to it and actually make it. So if you have combination of direct supply of fertilizer, you bring another scheme close to anchor borrower, if you don't want to call it that name, and you also bring tractor, you see that it would have been a combination of solutions that can actually engender, output of farm produce in 2026 going forward.
Indeed, quite impressive there. But do you see this as a case of bobbing someone's head behind their backs? We're not seeing farmers not really being involved in, a program expected to take care of them. Politicians planning for them without really involving some of these farmers.
For me, I think it's not a good one, and they have not worked as expected. I've engaged some farmers. I think I was, before this new year, I was on different platforms discussing, and they brought some farmers. And those farmers actually said, they decried that now they are losing front, left, and center. They are losing out. Yes, you may think you have crashed the price, but how long are we going to depend on foreign, solutions to our problems? So most of those farmers need direct intervention. So I think that's what we should do. And we should go beyond federal government. Federal government needs to find a way to engage the subnationals, because subnationals actually own this land. States and local government own the land. How many land does federal government have to actually cultivate produce? And that's why you must carry them along. And actually, when you're able to give them some farm allocation, you might use a style to give them direction that spends a percentage on farming so that we can actually see the output. Because if you look at our major problem, food component is always very, very high. Once food is available in abundance, people can buy it at very affordable rates. I assure you that inflation will come down to single digits.
Indeed. Also, in the course of the outgone year as well, a new ministry was created. The Ministry of Livestock was created by the federal government to take care of our livestock. Given, the potential in that space, do we think we are taking the right direction? We are taking the right paths?
Well, for us to create it, I think we are taking the right direction. You recall that we have farmer headers crisis a whole lot. For me, I was thinking that that's one of the reasons it's aimed to create solutions for farmers headers and to make sure that livestock are given priority. Because if you go to a place like Botswana, they can feed the whole of Africa with livestock. You look at their land; they are just maybe 2 million, and they can feed the whole Africa with their livestock. So I don't know why we are still where we are. But I think, by now I was thinking they would have moved with the speed to actually achieve a whole lot of things by introducing ranches. I recall during President Jonathan, he tried to create is it nomadic school so as to encourage these people to go to school and have farming. I mean, their livestock around them. There's At this age, you cannot continue to be doing marauding and taking cow from one place to the other. First and foremost, the cow cannot be healthy. You need to see those countries that have ranches. See how healthy their livestock are. You also need to look at the lifestyle of people. By the time all these children follow cow from one place to the other, they will be lacking behind in terms of education. And you also remember that farming has gone beyond, whole and cutlass, perhaps, or pushing a cow here and there. It has got to a place whereby it is much more scientific. That's why we said the livestock. I expect them to put more effort more than this. So actually convince the Fulanis and the elders to make sure that they actually ranch their livestock.
Indeed, talking about ranching their livestock. It's a new year, like of course, it's a new year already. What direction do you think this ministry should take? I particularly think they are being slow in terms of introducing of their policies and, of course, implementation.
Well, the fact is that Nigeria, we're always good at a good blueprint. There is always policy framework, policy direction, but the implementation is the key. So I expect the ministry to engage the states so that the states can join hands with them, and every state will create a colony or a kind of area that will be for the livestock, for the ranching, and a whole lot of. I think I saw somewhere is in Gogolada that they are preparing. I don't know how far it is. I was thinking by now all the people that have cow would have relocated to that area. I also saw in Borno the effort of the governors to actually make sure that they have a particular place. So I think federal government through the Ministry of Livestock should engage the states so that they can actually work it out.
In your view, now, let me ask you, do you think government should own this livestock? Because some have argued that this is a private business. I mean, do you think government should own this livestock? Because I feel, if you like you mentioned Botswana, Netherlands, and the likes of them, these are, places where livestock contribute largely to their GDP. Do you think government should own, these livestock in a way?
Right. I think government should take the lead by investing in it. So if government can have the capacity to actually create it, I think that would be fine and to be faster, because if you expect people to come and invest in it, it might actually take time. Some people have private ranch that they're actually rearing some animals. Some people have it already, but the level at which we are looking at, I think is what government should come into and actually create it. Government is the one that can take the lead in this, especially with the issues of lifestyle. And I have seen a lot of argument that it's not a private business. Why should government involve? If you look at the negative externalities that follow it, you agree with me that I think government should invest in it and even encourage them to go there. President Jonathan actually did so. Create school, when you say we are creating a ranching, a ranch, it's not a small thing. You have to provide water, you have to provide school, you have to provide electricity, you have to provide, a system that will make sure that they always have a feed to feed the animals. So I think is what government should invest in so that we can quickly, change the pattern and stop being behind where the world is actually moving to.
Indeed, so a very good one. The government need to invest in it. Let's move to the monetary policy as well. In 2025, we saw that CBN focused on combating inflation through high rates, but shifted towards the end with easing cutting rates in September 2027 percent there. Of course, let's look at how it were from February in 2025. The MPR retained at 27.5%. It was also retained in May as well. In July, same percentage, 27.5%, until September, after we saw a drop in inflation. We saw the CBN cutting MPR by 50 basis points there to 27%. Of course, that's the current rate that we have now. It was actually the first cut since 2020. Do you think CBN took the right decision, or do you think their effort in any way is helping to, bring down inflation numbers?
Right, like rightly said, you said since 2020. I was about to say that, but you took that out of my mouth. That since 2020, we've not seen ease in that area. But I want to agree with the CBN because such gain that we have achieved shouldn't be eroded, with quick cuts. But I think they have cut two times consecutively. Apart from September, the NPC after September, they also cut, but the cut does not reflect in the actual number. It reflects in the corridor. If you look at the corridor, it's minus 50 plus 250. So if you look at the corridor, that simply means that they have actually cut it, but not to maybe 500 basis point like we are looking at. But I think it's encouraging. So, and we expect that to reflect in the bank because cutting and it's not reflecting in the bank is also an issue. I can also tell you, like I said, throughout 2015, I think 2025, government actually sacrificed growth for to reduce inflation, which is understandable because of what they actually intend to achieve. However, I think going forward in this 2026, MPC will have to keep losing it. Keep easing it rather. Because I recall, even in the communique, if you read the communique, the last communique of MPC, it's clearly stated that they will continue, from the body language, they will continue to ease it. It's a good one because 2025 was a year whereby investment was very difficult for manufacturing sector, for small businesses. I can tell you, most people resolve to also consider taking their money to where they can get interest rather than investing. And the the consequential effect of it is that there will be low employment. Remember, if there is no manufacturing company producing, your industry is not producing, there's no way they will employ. So it will affect employment. You recall that MSME also employ over 50% of Nigerians. If there is no capital, they will not be in business. And the only way they can get capital is to go to bank to borrow. But you cannot borrow from bank at this level of interest. Is pretty difficult. Where you can see maybe micro finance will be doing, like, let me not even give, but the fact is that banks are giving out loans at over 30%. So how can we actually do business? Pretty difficult. So I think what CBN must do now is to start easing it and make sure that they're not sacrificing growth because of inflation again. We can marry the two at this point in time, pari passu, to achieve what we actually intend. Because if there is no production, if you even recall the GDP still shows that service sector is about 53%. So service sector still take the lead. And for a good economy that wants to grow beyond where we are, I think for Nigeria, that is agrarian country, we think agriculture should take the lead, industry should follow before we can say service sector. But it is the other way around now. Service sector is taking the lead. And remember, in service sector, it's about portfolio investment, it's about banking tools and banking business. So if in that area, those people who only invest in the stock market, and when they want to take their money, they take their money. So there is no direct employment that will actually involve.
Indeed, like you rightly pointed out, with regards to NPR, the CBN is focusing on disinflation. But people are saying that while there is progress, but there's risk. I mean, there's a persistent risk. What will you say to that?
Right. So when I saw there's a particular acronym they will use to bring about inflation down. I forgot managed by the Ministry of Trade and Investment. I think it's a good one if you are trying to actually bring down inflation, because we need a single digit inflation to actually, which is when you come to around 12 or 8 that we can say yes, around 8 rather, that we can say yes, the economy is getting better. And it will reflect, because if you look at the lag time of the easing, which is September till now, it does not really reflect, in the issue of the economy. Perhaps it has not actually trickled down. So we must do other things that will make sure we get better. And I can also tell you that another factor that we must consider is our forex. You can see that, yes, we have stability of between 1,400 to 1,500. But the problem lies in that if you feel a deflator, no matter what you try to do, if the forex does not come down, you will continue to actually have issues in what we buy and what we consume.
Indeed, you took that away from me. I was actually going to the exchange rate stability. It's been between the amount that you mentioned, between 1,450, 1,500 in recent times. But do you think that's the right value of the naira? Some are saying it's overvalued. Some are saying naira is undervalued. Where do we stand in this case?
Right. So I think it's much more clearer these days because you look at the gap between the bureau de change and the CB and the banks, so that the gap is very small. Is that 1 naira, 2 naira? Sometimes they even get balance. I think it's getting better, but we need to do more. Doing more simply means that we need to put much more on the supply side. I could see the foreign reserve and all that thing, but we need to still do more to make sure that we discourage, and we also must also discourage using dollar for measurement and buying of things in Nigeria, because by the time you don't do that, it will give us issue. I salute to CBN too, because I recall that they provide a card whereby you can actually buy, in naira rather than using dollars. So I think they should continue to make that effort. You recall they make a lot of efforts in the past, through reduction of people operating bureau de change, reduction. I mean, also looking at reduction in what they're allowed to actually come into Nigeria. They also make sure that they look at crypto and bring some sanity in that area. So they put a lot of effort in that area. But I think we need to go beyond, below 1,000. That would be the right place to be. Recall this government actually met it at 450 or thereabouts. So they need to do more to make sure that it comes down below 1,000.
Wow, that's quite ambitious. Target that you are setting for the government there. We hope we'll be able to achieve that. But there is also a concern as well that the
The
adoption
government
of the
has
willing.
been ambitious in their own parts in different things as well. So it's good we also set a target for them to achieve.
Absolutely, that's a very good one. There are people who are also saying that adopting the willing seller, willing buyer system it's only boosting the reserve, but not in any way, improve business and market confidence.
Well, for me, I think, I'm not a supporter of willing buyer, willing seller, because we've been to different countries. And if you go to different country, government of that country puts keen interest on the issue of forex. In fact, if you go to those countries, I recall I went to one. When I went to change my dollar to their currency, they have to ask for my international passport. They have to scan it. They have to do a lot of due diligence before they even give me the money, because they are thinking if they don't make it free. As it were, in Nigeria today, you just go to a particular place designated for those bureau de change and you collect your money. But in those places, they are very, very conscious. They want to. So I think the willing seller, willing buyer only open us the more, which is not a good one. So I think government should be conscious to actually manage, not giving it room. Yeah, and if you look at it, government also, in a way, have been trying to actually reverse that case and monitor it and measure it to an extent. But I think they should come all out to actually make sure that they don't make it a free willing buyer for willing seller.
All right, that's a very good one as well. But let's talk about policy coordination now. Do you think there is a synergy between the monetary and, of course, the fiscal authorities in terms of policy implementation?
My answer would be yes, because in the past we've seen different scenario. I recall during Emefiele and Rukaya, the former minister, Rukaya, the former minister of finance. So I recall that there was a back and forth then when the minister said he is not aware they want to actually change the money. I also recall different issues they actually have. So it's good they have a handshake so that, the achievement of one side will not be eroded by the other. So there is need for coordination. I think in this case, there are much more coordination. The only issues that I can say we have, which you can attribute to that, is the issue of budget. Budget is very, very key. And once a particular component of budget is not implemented, or any component is not implemented as expected, it's going to affect the economy very well. A good example is the budget of 2024, 2025. I think this really reduced the score of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because I listened to him while he was speaking in National Assembly, and he was saying that he will make sure that that the normal year calendar will be restored. I also listened to National Assembly saying that they will stop, budgets that will not follow the cycle. So sometimes I got wonder that was it that government, Mr. President is not in charge, certainly make sure that the budget is released as and when due, or it is well projected, or it is well released. Because if you look at Nigeria today, the capital expenditure of the budget started 2025 capital expenditure started in October. That's quite a surprise, and they are also rolling over the budget, and now we have about 58 trillion or so budget. We are saying that, remember, for debt service, it is an obligation. Immediately it is January 1st, you have to start. Like today now, it starts. You have to start the obligation now. And recall also that the recurrent expenditure, government must start it today, because there is obligation to actually pay salary, pay this, pay that. So that simply means that recurrent, even though the money is not available, remember, federal government will go to CBN to look for ways and means to kickstart that. But when it comes to capital projects, this component suffered more. And you agree with me that this component is what Nigerians benefit the more. That's only thing that go around and benefit Nigeria in terms of social infrastructure, like road, like education, like health, and other social infrastructure. That's the only way we benefit. But the surprise thing is that by the time, the major problem of our budget is deficit, and beyond deficit, the revenue is always not met. There's also a gap between President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Minister of Finance, where the president said yes, he has met with the revenue obligation, but the minister later come out and said no, we have not met our revenue target. But where I'm actually going is that, by the time there is shortage in revenue, it cannot affect the recurrent expenditure, it cannot affect the debt servicing. The only way it will affect is the capital expenditure. You could also see that if you go to Ministry of Finance, there are a lot of people at 2025, I wouldn't say about today first, people will be sleeping there, saying that they need to pay the contractors. Remember, when you pay the contractor, that it will trickle down to generality of Nigeria. And when we say contractor, most of these contractors are actually carrying out fiscal projects that can engender development and bring about infrastructure in Nigeria. So I think, if you ask me, the only area I think they should work to make sure that it actually work, and to be commission of the president and the executive rather, and the legislature, is in the area of capital project implementation.
Indeed, there was something you pointed out there which is very, very important with regards to the revenue. I recall in August, the president did say we've met our revenue target for the year 2025. And of course, the minister contradicted that in a way by saying that we are short by 30 trillion. Now we only achieved, 10 trillion out of the 40 trillion naira projected. What does that tell you? That tells you that there is a communication gap, or more like, the synergy between even within the executives.
Yes, it's clear that we have issue between the budget, Ministry of Budget, Ministry of Finance. The synergy is not actually there as expected, because we shouldn't be hearing such communication or miscommunication or gap in communication from the president, for that matter, and the minister. So I think it's a serious one that we need to look into critically. And perhaps there's something we are missing that we used to see before. Before a president will present a budget, he will tell us the percentage level of the previous year. We have not seen such communication, especially in this government. They've not come to tell us that this budget performed 50%, this budget performed 60%, or 80%, as the case may be. I think that's another way of being accountable to Nigerians.
Indeed, being accountable to Nigerians. Let's go to GDP, which is indeed very important. Of course, Nigeria GDP growth in 2025 showed a strong recovery, averaging around 3.9%, and of course, 4.2%, driven by non-oil sector, especially services, digital economy, agriculture, and some oil recovery, with Q3 hitting 3.98%, exceeding 2024 figures, and of course marking a solid foundation for future growth despite ongoing challenges like inflation and of course issues of insecurity. You've already spoken about the relying on services sector. How do you rate the GDP growth in 2025?
Well, I think there is some level of activation of construction, real estate. I think there's some level of bringing in of other components to GDP, which is a very, very good one. However, you can see oil is still taking oil and gas is still taking the lead. I'm happy that we have a considerable stable in terms of oil theft, vandalization. I think that has reduced to an extent, and I think the our output is getting momentum and improving gradually. However, it is also very funny that we always see service sector taking the lead. We must, I think the agricultural sector is also bouncing back gradually, but I think we need to do more, especially in the agricultural sector, to ensure that, yes, agricultural sector really come to take the lead. So I think this in terms of empowering manufacturing sector too, because manufacturing sector is also key. If you look at manufacturing sector, they are not actually doing well in terms of industrialization. And that simply means that it's the lack of capital. And capital can only be available when the interest rate is attractive. If the interest rate is very, is not attractive, people find it difficult. So I think government should do more in terms of making sure that the agricultural sector and industrial sector actually take the lead.
Indeed, which is very important. Let's look at the outlook for 2026 in terms of GDP. Look at the World Bank, their projection, their forecast for Nigeria is 4.2% and, of course, 4.4% by 2027. Given what you have seen so far, do you think the reform is already yielding positive results that will drive our GDP growth even above the level projected by the World Bank?
Right. So I think in terms of GDP, I'm thinking yes, we can do that because from if you look at the reform, it is helping us in terms of balance of trade and balance of payments. Because especially Dangote has actually changed that the dynamics in that. And you recall that Dangote is also going to stock markets now, and he also said he wants to double his investment. So doubling the investment and actually will bring about more balance of payment and more balance of output. Then, in terms of output, you recall that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also bring about some ministries like Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, Ministry of Mining, Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Creative Economy. So I think by now, those ministries would have been stabilizing by now. Perhaps the results will come out more in this 2026, and we are hoping that the economy will get better. So I'm also projecting between 4% to 4% to 4.5%. That's what I'm actually looking at.
Indeed. We can't finish this conversation without looking at, of course, the oil and gas sector. A lot of transformation is going on in that space with the coming up of Dangote refinery. Though a lot of controversies, a lot of, back and forth in that space. How will you, what's your take on what happened in the course of the year 2025? The Dangote refinery is standing so tall, of course, while the marketers and other key stakeholders are also trying to ensure that there's no monopoly in the oil and gas space.
I think the best thing to happen to Nigerians is the coming of Dangote, because it has actually shown a lot of things. We've seen people that want to, I think there are two investors now. Boa is coming up, and there's another investor trying to actually build another refinery. That's going to be a very good one because we'll be operating in a global market. Nigeria will now be hub for oil and gas in Africa, so that we can actually be the one supplying instead of them buying from abroad. But in the issue of monopoly, as an economist, we negate and we do not want to give room for. We don't like giving room for monopoly. So we have seen the different fracas between Dangote Pengas, Dangote Farouk, Dangote NMDPRA. So we have seen a lot of things. But for me, I think Dangote also should subject himself to an extent to regulators, because without regulators, things cannot happen. More so, if you look at America, with over 130 refinery, they still import from other countries. In fact, Dangote company is also exporting aviation fuel to America. With the fact that even only in Texas, there are about more than 8 or 12 refinery. And you also see Saudi Arabia up till now, they still give them for importation. So the fact remains that for us to have a robust economy, for us to have a competitive economy, there should be room for importation. For now, if at all, if you look at the analysis, I'm not sure what Dangote is producing is sufficient for Nigeria consumption daily. So there should be room for competition. Competition will help the
Indeed, it will be to the benefit and advantage of customers. Well, let's look at NNPC as well. We saw that the federal government also written off some of their debt as well. $1.42 billion and over 5 trillion naira debt was forfeited by the federal government. They're talking about the debt the NNPC owned by the government were written off. What's your take on that? Hello, Mr. Ilias, are you there? Mr. Ilias, can you hear me? Okay, we seem to be having network challenges. Let's take this short break. When we come back, we'll conclude our conversation. Don't go away. Glad to have you back. There are some technical challenges there, but that has been fixed now. We have Dr. Ilias back now. Dr. Ilias, before we went on that short break, very necessary, short break there, we're talking about the debt of NNPC to the federal government has been written off. What's your take on that? $1.42 billion and, of course, 5.15 trillion naira.
Right. You know that the PIA has actually come to solve a lot of problems, and for them to have a good takeoff without trouble, I think it's not bad for them to. We've seen debt relief in different areas. Even state governors are actually benefit. So it's not bad if government is giving that. I think it's not bad. All we need to do that they need to be accountable for them. They want a better income for NPC this year compared to what we have in the year 2025.
Indeed, as we begin to wrap up now, let's talk about our debt profile. As of June 2025, Nigeria total public debt reached 152.4 trillion naira, that is $99.68 billion. With projection, it could climb to 187.79 trillion naira, of course, driven by a new borrowing, currency devaluation, and of course, impacting the currency devaluation impacting the debt as well. What's your take on our debt portfolio? It kept rising.
Right. So I think can we sustain the debt is not what we should look at because look at the service debt servicing. We are doing that it's actually taking what we're supposed to invest in capital expenditure. So for me, I think government need to look at the debt they are collecting. I just get to hear that we are going to borrow for the coastal road now. Those, if you are borrowing for such, it's capital in nature, and it will be bad because to directly or indirectly affect the economy positively. But by and large, we should also look at our revenue to debt servicing. That's another area we need to look at critically. Because even for the fact that there was a rebasing and a lot of things happened, by now we would have been saying that it's got virtually 90% of our revenue. And we also look at debt to GDP, which where government used to bank on. We are actually posting close to the Rubicon that was not crossed. So I think we need to look at it critically and reduce the level. Because for someone like us, we're thinking that yes, first of all, has been removed. There's a inflation of naira. With that, we should borrow less and have much more money. Though if you see that there's more money going to the states. But my challenge now is that, in fact, in terms of fiscal performance, states appear to be much more even conscious compared to the federal government. I think that's what we need to do more, and we should use the level of our borrowing.
Indeed, reducing the level of our borrowing. Something you mentioned there, and of course, a lot of Nigerians, I agree with you, that with the taking out of fuel subsidy, of course, the exchange rate fluctuation, and of course, so many other subsidy be taken out. Federal government shouldn't have problem raising revenue, but government is, the new tax law is, coming into effect today. With the, more Nigeria expected to come into the tax net, and of course, more people expected to pay more tax. What's your take on it?
Well, the question is that is it okay? They are going to expand the tax net, so it's more people expected to pay more tax. For me, I think it's with cautious optimism. Today being January 1st, I want to take it with cautious optimism because you have seen a lot of hula baloo that talks about should they start it or should they not start it. We have seen a lot of things. So we don't know what's actually happening. But for Nigerians, a lot of people have that fear Because I've seen some people that comes to me last year that came to me rather that should he, what can he do to actually open more accounts and say we should reference? I say, why are you opening more accounts? Say, because of, they say by the time next year comes, 2026 comes around, like today now, we will not be able to open accounts. There's a lot of misinformation, which I think government should have do more sensitization of it. For me, I would say, yes, let's welcome it. Let's see how it is. But National Assembly should be ready to go for many amendments. So if by the time you see that there's something that is not balanced, you can go for amendment, but that we should not start. For me, I think we should start. It would have been a good one for Nigeria.
All right, indeed, a good one for Nigeria. As we wrap up now, what's your take? What are your expectations in this year, this new year, from in terms of economic growth, in terms of reforms, in terms of, inflation, macroeconomic indices? What are your expectations in the new year?
Yeah, my general expectation is that the gain of macroeconomy that are positive, we should start reaping it this year. Because if you don't use the gain, you don't get to enjoy the gain now, when are we going to get the gain? So government must do everything possible to make sure we get the gain. I also want to see the MPC cutting the interest rate so that it will enable manufacturers and small business to actually thrive by getting more capital to do more business. In terms of GDP, I'm also looking at maybe 4.2, 4.5 around that area as well. Then in terms of inflation, I want to see it continuously going down, and we pray that we will not see any force majeure, which is an act of God that will reverse all the gain we have achieved. But I also want to remind the president and the handlers and also the National Assembly, this is pre-election year. We need to make sure that the election hula baloo should not affect the economy, because if they allow it, all the gain would have been eroded again. So I hope we'll have a positive 2025, and I also hope that all the gains trickle down to Nigeria by having more demand power, that more money in Nigerian pockets. I also want to encourage government to make sure everything they can do to make sure that cost of transportation actually come down as much as possible.
Indeed, but finally, before I let you go, do you see MPR, coming down to single digits, or even inflation at a single digit as well in 30 seconds?
Right. Yes, for inflation, we see it possible. It can come to 10, it can come to 9, but it's floating around that area. But for MPR, that will be too ambitious to think it will come to single digits. I see it coming down, but not for single digits.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, an economist. We appreciate your time on Business Daily today. Happy New Year.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to Nigerians.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. With that, is a wrap on this show today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Yusuf Akogu.